Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The new year has only just begun, and as we've already heard, Brexit tensions are bubbling after the resignation last week of the UK's ambassador to the EU, Sir Ivan Rogers. He's fiercely attacked in today's papers, again as we've heard, but his friends defend his description of the government's Brexit strategy as muddled. And one of those friends is the veteran Europhile Ken Clarke, who joins me now. Welcome, Mr. Clarke.
Good morning.
The fundamental charge against a big tranche of our diplomatic service is that they are, because of the way they've been brought up and the languages they speak and so forth, they are institutionally Europhile, they're institutionally hostile to Brexit. They didn't give David Cameron the best shot he had at that negotiation, and now they are getting in the way with Theresa May.
Well, there's a hardline core of Eurosceptics, not the generality of Eurosceptics, who are perfectly pleasant, intelligent people, but the real zealots in the House of Commons and in the press, who just turn to abuse of anybody who faintly seems to disagree with their very hardline, hard Brexit view, and who believe there are great establishment conspiracies against them. This is all nonsense. Ivan is an extremely good diplomat with huge expertise on European politics and policy. He would have wanted to implement the policy of the government of the day, whatever party, whatever that policy was. And Theresa needs to address the more serious question, I think, of the muddle he's complaining about, see whether she agrees with him, and decide whether she can improve the way in which she organises the government to get to a proper conclusion. To turn everything into personal abuse as soon as anybody seems faintly to disagree with our new zealot crusade to leave the continent of Europe is rather an unfortunate feature of our post-Brexit politics, which I hope we soon lose.
You called it an opinion poll, but it was a national referendum which we did vote to leave. And the question is whether senior diplomats are absolutely up to make that happen, to help that happen. And the extent to which people like Sir Ivan, who is a very distinguished public servant, I agree with that, are not entirely enthusiastic about the project they are being asked to lead.
And I'm sure Ivan was quite prepared to actually implement the policy of the government, would have been, if he'd still been in post by the end of this month, to leave the European Union. I do know Ivan quite well, though, because he once worked for me when he was a rising young star in the Treasury, he's immediately damned amongst the zealot Eurosceptics. He doesn't share my views. I think he's rather a cautious pro-European, but I don't know, because like every civil servant, he kept his political views to himself. But he wants a policy. What a civil servant wants is a clear policy guidance. That's the task of his political masters. Then he will, in an expert way, seek to help the government implement it. And that means that the policy you give on trade, economics, security, international crime, environmental issues is based on fact, is actually deliverable, that the minister understands what the problems are going to be in delivering it, and so on. And obviously, Ivan's been frustrated because I suspect one or two of the individuals he's having to deal with in the different departments just give him slogans they were using during the campaign, but also because he's not quite sure whether the government's faced up to the business of having a policy in the real world. The referendum said we leave the EU. It didn't say what our new arrangements should be with the outer world at all.
Nevertheless, we did vote that way. Since that's happened, the economy has gone much better than people like you and the Remainers were suggesting it was going to, and we now have the choice about how we leave. Nicola Sturgeon has said today that if we are not members of the single market, she will trigger another referendum in Scotland. Do you think it is at all conceivable, given the way people voted and the importance of control over immigration, that we would actually stay in the single market?
I think it would be a huge advantage to stay in the single market. The referendum, the actual campaign was dreadful. and as reported in the national media. The question of what our future trading relationships would be was not addressed by either side with all the silly arguments that were used. And I don't think any right-of-centre government in the world would think that the idea of leaving free access to a market of 500 million prosperous consumers was a sensible thing to do. All the daft forecasts of when you're going to have a downturn, how much it's going to cost each household, all that, of course, turned out to be silly. But the fact is, you are bound to be poorer than you otherwise would be if you were raise new trading barriers between yourself and your biggest single market in the world, the most open free trading market in the world, of which at the moment you're leading and influential member. And the referendum didn't decide that.
Sorry.
And what's got to be decided is how to stay in the customs union, how to stay in the single market, but still meet some of the legitimate concerns that the electorate were expressing.
You say stay in the customs union, but if we stay in the customs union, we can't negotiate our own new free trade deals with other countries, and frankly, there is no point in this grand new department being headed by Liam Fox.
There is no point in this grand new department. Liam has nothing to do, even if we leave the customs union, we won't do that for 2 or 3 years. He's got nothing to do for the next 2 or 3 years. The customs union is the old common market that we joined back in the 1st of January 1973. Eurosceptics until recently said that was a very good thing, the common market. One of the lies they use is that the 75 referendum only endorsed the common market. It's absolutely pointless to leave the customs union so long as we can negotiate a basis upon which we stay in it. It's a huge advantage, and the government must have given some reassurance to people like Nissan when they were trying to get them to continue investing in the northeast on the customs union.
Do you think there is a plan?
I don't think there was by Christmas. I haven't been in the political pool, as it were, since Christmas. I think Theresa's announced she's going to make a major speech at the end of this month. By that time, she's got to have a clear plan. And it's no good making another speech which is just vague. I think she's quite right to have said nothing so far. To start pandering to the press by giving bits of policy was a mistake they made at the party conference, and she's not repeated that. By the end of this month, she's really got to have a clear government line and actually just have a look about who's responsible for delivering it. Having 3 different departments all playing turf wars against each other, all this kind of thing is nonsense. She needs a good diplomat in charge like Tim Barrow, who she's now appointed in Brussels, and she needs to work with David Davis on putting together the right pattern which reflects the referendum. I regret that. I don't support that myself, but I've not changed my views, but actually has some real practical applications in the real world, doesn't damage our investment and jobs.
All right. Ken Clarke, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
I've been getting away